The greatest concert of Michael Jackson's life didn't happen at Wembley Stadium. It happened because of a traffic jam. Michael Jackson sat in the back of his limousine at 6:47 p.m., staring at the unmoving line of traffic ahead. He was supposed to be on stage at Wembley Stadium in exactly 43 minutes. 80,000 fans were waiting. The concert was being broadcast live to 30 countries, and he was completely, hopelessly stuck in London traffic. His driver, James, turned around with panic in his eyes. "Mr. Jackson, we're not moving. There's been a major accident ahead. Police say the road could be blocked for hours." Michael looked out the window at the gridlock street. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the roof of the limousine. Then he heard something cutting through the sound of rain and distant sirens. Music, live music, coming from a small building about 50 feet away. A worn sign read the Rose and Crown Pub. Michael's hand moved toward the door handle. "Sir, please stay in the car," his bodyguard Bill said from the front seat. "We have protocol. Your team is working on extraction." Michael paused, his hand on the handle. "Bill, music doesn't care about protocol." He opened the door and stepped out into the London rain. What happened in the next 2 hours at that tiny neighborhood bar became the most legendary unplanned performance in music history. And the struggling musicians on that stage would never be the same. Let me take you back to September 14th, 1997, to understand how a traffic jam and a small bar created magic that no stadium could ever produce. It was the History World Tour, Michael Jackson's most ambitious tour yet. Tonight's show at Wembley Stadium was completely sold out. 80,000 tickets gone in under 3 hours. The production crew had been setting up for 2 days. Every detail was perfect. Every light cue programmed. Every camera angle calculated. Every second planned. But London traffic had other plans. Michael had left his hotel at 5:30 p.m., giving himself plenty of time for the 45-minute drive to Wembley. The route was cleared. The timing was precise. Everything was under control. Until it wasn't. At 6:15 p.m., traffic came to a complete standstill on the A40. A lorry had jackknifed, blocking all lanes. Emergency services were on scene, but the backup stretched for miles. Cars weren't moving. Engines idled. Frustration built. Michael's tour manager, Frank, was on the phone in a panic. "Michael, we need to get you there. We're looking at helicopter options. We're trying to clear a route. The mayor's office is involved. Just stay in the car. Stay safe." But Michael Jackson had never been good at staying still. And that music coming from the Rose and Crown Pub, cutting through the rain and chaos, was calling to him like a siren song. Inside the pub, the Monday night crowd of about 40 people was half watching a local band called the Forgotten Keys perform on the tiny corner stage. Most people were nursing pints, having quiet conversations, glancing up occasionally when a song caught their attention. The band had been together for 3 years, playing pubs and small venues across London, dreaming of making it big but struggling to get noticed in a city overflowing with talented musicians competing for the same breaks. The lead singer was Danny Morrison, 28 years old, working as a plumber during the day and gigging at night. Dark circles under his eyes from the double life. Calloused hands from pipes and guitar strings. Dreams that felt increasingly distant with each passing year. His girlfriend, Sarah, played bass, her fingers dancing across the strings with unconscious grace. Tom sat behind the drums, steady and reliable, the heartbeat of the group. And Rebecca, shy and brilliant, hid behind her keyboard, letting her playing speak louder than she ever could. They were halfway through their cover of Don't Stop Believin' when the pub door opened and a figure stepped in from the rain. A man in sunglasses, a fedora pulled low, and a long dark coat that dripped water onto the worn wooden floor. Most people didn't look up. This was London. People dressed strangely all the time. Eccentric was normal. Weird was expected. Michael Jackson walked slowly to the back of the pub, water trailing behind him, and sat at the far end of the bar. He ordered a water from the bartender, who barely glanced at him, and turned his attention to the stage. The band wasn't bad. They had heart. They had passion. Raw talent searching for refinement. But Danny was struggling with the high notes, his voice straining, reaching for something just beyond his grasp. Rebecca kept missing chord changes, her confidence wavering. They were good, but they didn't believe they were good. And that lack of belief showed in every hesitation. When the song ended, a smattering of polite applause came from the dozen people who were paying attention. Danny leaned into the microphone, forcing a smile. Thanks, everyone. We're the Forgotten Keys. We'll be here all night, apparently, since none of you are leaving. A few people chuckled. Next up, we're going to attempt something probably stupid. A Michael Jackson song. Billie Jean. Everyone say a prayer for us. Sarah, the bassist, laughed nervously. Danny, you can't hit those notes. Let's do something else. Something safer. Come on, it's Michael Jackson. Everyone loves Michael Jackson. Even if I completely butcher it, people will sing along and cover up my mistakes, right? From the back of the bar, a voice called out. Calm. Certain. You're in the wrong key. Danny squinted through the dim pub lighting toward the voice. Sorry, what? The man in the fedora and sunglasses stood up and walked closer to the stage, his movements smooth, almost floating. Billie Jean, you're about to play it in E minor, but it's actually an F-sharp minor. If you play it in E, you'll struggle with the vocal range. Your voice will crack on the chorus. Danny stared at this stranger, giving him unsolicited musical advice. Who is this guy? Some failed musician with too many opinions? Thanks, man. Are you a musician or something? Something like that, Michael said, his voice still disguised, pitched slightly deeper than normal. Well, if you're such an expert on Michael Jackson, Danny said with a slight edge of challenge, why don't you come up here and show us how it's done? The pub got a little quieter. A few people looked up, sensing potential conflict or entertainment. Okay, Michael said simply, and started walking toward the stage. Tom, the drummer, leaned toward Danny. What are you doing? You just invited some random bloke on stage. Let him embarrass himself, Danny muttered. Then maybe he'll stop giving us advice. Michael stepped onto the tiny platform that served as a stage. It was maybe 6 feet by 6 feet. Barely room for the band's equipment and 4 people, let alone a 5th. Cables everywhere. Amps pushed into corners. Drum kit taking up half the space. Do you mind if I join you for this one? Michael asked Danny, his voice still controlled, still disguised. Danny, amused and curious now, shrugged. Sure, why not? You know Billie Jean? I'm familiar with it, Michael said. A couple of people in the pub laughed. Familiar with it. Like anyone in the world wasn't familiar with Billie Jean. Rebecca counted them in, her hands shaking slightly with nervousness about this unexpected addition. 1, 2, 3, 4. The opening bass line of Billie Jean started. Simple, iconic, for notes that everyone on earth recognized. Impossible to mess up. Michael took the microphone that Danny offered him, still wearing his sunglasses, still keeping his face partially hidden under the fedora. And then he began to sing. She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. The voice that came out wasn't loud, wasn't performed at full power, but it was unmistakable. That tone, that phrasing, that effortless control that made difficult notes sound casual. The pub went quiet, not gradually, instantly. Like someone had pressed a mute button on every conversation. Every drink paused halfway to mouths. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Every head turned slowly toward the tiny stage. Danny's hands froze on his guitar. His fingers stopped moving. His mouth fell open. He recognized that voice. Of course, he recognized that voice. Everyone recognized that voice. But it couldn't be. It was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Michael Jackson was supposed to be at Wembley Stadium right now, performing for 80,000 people in a massive production that had been planned for months. He wasn't in a random neighborhood pub in West London, singing with unknown musicians on a stage barely big enough to hold them. Sarah's bass playing got shaky, her rhythm faltering. Tom almost dropped his drumsticks, catching them at the last second. Rebecca stared in absolute shock, her fingers mechanically playing the chords while her brain tried to process what was happening. But Michael kept singing, kept performing, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. As if singing Billie Jean in a 50-person pub with terrible acoustics and a barely adequate sound system was exactly where he was meant to be at this moment. When Michael hit the chorus, something happened. He executed a perfect spin on the tiny stage, his movements fluid and precise despite the cramped space, barely avoiding Rebecca's keyboard, his foot nearly tangling in an amp cable but somehow missing it. Someone in the pub screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of recognition and disbelief. Oh my God, that's Michael Jackson. That's actually Michael Jackson. For maybe 3 seconds, no one moved. The room was frozen. Someone's glass slipped from their hand and shattered on the floor, the sound cutting through the suspended moment like lightning. And then chaos erupted. People rushed toward the stage. Phones came out. Cameras started flashing. The bartender dropped the glass he was cleaning. Martin, the pub owner, came running from the back office, his face white with shock. But Michael didn't stop performing. He smiled that famous smile, removed his sunglasses with one hand while still singing, and kept going. He was in it now, committed, present. Danny Morrison stood frozen in place, still holding his guitar, no longer playing. His idol, his absolute hero, the reason he had picked up a guitar in the first place. The man whose poster had been on his wall when he was 12 years old, standing 3 feet away from him, singing the song they'd been about to cover, in their pub, on their stage. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. When the song ended, the 40 people in the pub gave the loudest, most enthusiastic, most desperate applause that tiny space had ever heard. The sound was overwhelming in the small room, bouncing off walls, creating an acoustic chaos of joy. People were crying, actually crying, screaming, jumping. Total pandemonium in a venue that usually hosted quiet Monday night crowds, nursing pints and talking about football. No one clapped. No one moved. The silence was louder than the music. Then, as if London itself exhaled, the room exploded. Michael bowed, a genuine bow with real gratitude, then turned to the forgotten keys. You guys are good. Really good. You just need to trust yourselves more. Danny, you're holding back on the vocals because you're afraid of being judged. Don't be. Your voice is character. Sarah, your bass line was absolutely perfect, but you got nervous halfway through when you realized people were listening. Own it. Tom, solid, reliable drumming. You're the foundation. Rebecca, you've got real talent on those keys, serious talent, but you're hiding behind that instrument. Don't hide. The world needs to see you. The band stood there speechless, their mouths open, their instruments hanging forgotten in their hands. Michael Jackson was giving the musical notes. Actual professional advice. Personal feedback. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Martin, the pub owner, pushed through the growing crowd that had somehow materialized. The word had spread. People from the street were coming in. Mr. Jackson, are you really here? In my pub? Right now? Traffic, Michael said simply, wiping rain from his face. I'm supposed to be at Wembley Stadium, but the roads are completely blocked. Major accident. Could be hours. So I heard your music through the rain and thought I'd stop in and see what was happening. Is that okay? Am I intruding? Is that okay? Martin laughed in disbelief, a slightly hysterical edge to the sound. Sir, you can do whatever you want. You can buy this pub if you want. You can live here. You can. Michael laughed, a genuine, warm sound. I just want to make some music with these guys. He turned back to the forgotten keys. What do you say? Want to jam for a bit? I've got time. Probably about an hour before my security team figures out how to extract me from London traffic. We might as well make it count. Danny found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. You want to jam with us? With our band? Why not? Michael spread his hands. When's the next time I'll get to play a venue this intimate? When's the next time I'll get to jam with musicians who are playing purely for love of music? Not because it's scheduled or contracted or part of massive production. This is real. This is what music is supposed to be. In that tiny bar, history wasn't performing. It was breathing. For the next 90 minutes, Michael Jackson performed an impromptu concert with the forgotten keys at the Rose and Crown pub. Word spread like wildfire through London. Text messages, phone calls, social media posts that went viral in seconds. Within 30 minutes, Over 200 people had somehow crowded into and around the pub, pressing against windows, standing on the street in the rain, desperate to witness this impossible moment. Michael and the band performed Smooth Criminal, Beat It, The Way You Make Me Feel, Human Nature, and a dozen other songs. The set list wasn't planned. It was organic. Someone would suggest a song, they'd try it, laugh when they messed up, try again. Michael taught Danny his vocal techniques, physically showing him how to breathe, where to place the resonance. Feel it here, Michael said, touching his own chest. The power comes from breath control, not from forcing. He showed Tom some rhythm patterns on the drums, sitting behind the kit and demonstrating complex beats that Tom immediately tried to replicate, his face intense with concentration. He helped Rebecca with chord progressions, standing beside her keyboard and playing along, their hands moving in tandem. "You're thinking too much," Michael told her gently. "Feel it. Let your fingers know where to go without your brain interfering." He jammed with Sarah on bass lines, the two of them locked into a groove, communicating without words, just pure musical intuition. Between songs, Michael talked to the crowd, told stories about touring, about recording, about the early days with his brothers. He answered questions, made jokes, laughed at himself. He was relaxed, happy, more himself than anyone had seen him in years. The superstar facade was gone. This was just Michael, just a musician, just a man who loved making music. "This is what music should be," Michael said at one point, looking around the cramped pub with genuine affection. Not massive productions and pyrotechnics and laser shows. Just people, instruments, and songs that matter. This is where all starts. This is where the heart is. Danny Morrison couldn't stop staring, couldn't fully process what was happening. During a break between songs, he had to ask, "Mr. Jackson, I have to ask. You have 80,000 people waiting for you at Wembley. A live broadcast to 30 countries. Millions of pounds in production. Your entire team is probably losing their minds right now. Aren't you worried? Don't you need to go?" Michael smiled, that enigmatic expression that had graced a million magazine covers. "Those 80,000 people will understand. They're waiting for Michael Jackson, the performer, the spectacle, the show. But right now, I'm just being Michael Jackson, the musician. There's a difference. And I need to remember that difference sometimes. I need to remember why I'm trying to get to Wembley in the first place. It's not for the production. It's for this connection, this pure, unfiltered music." For the first time in years, Michael wasn't a star. He was just a man in love with music. At 8:30 p.m., Michael's security team finally located him through the dozens of social media posts tracking his location. They burst into the pub, professional and urgent, ready to extract him immediately and rush him to Wembley. "Michael, we need to go. Right now. We've managed to clear a route through back roads. We can still make it for a late show. The crowd is waiting. The production is ready. We need to move." But Michael held up his hand. "One more song. These guys deserve one more song. We're not leaving until we finish properly." His head of security started to protest, saw the look in Michael's eyes, and stopped. "One song. Then we go." Michael turned to the forgotten keys. "What do you want to play? This is your choice. Your moment. What song means the most to you?" Sarah spoke up for the first time all night, her voice shaky with emotion. "Man in the Mirror. That song. It changed my life when I was 16. I was in a really dark place, and that song made me believe I could be better, do better, make a difference. Can we play that? Would that be okay?" "Perfect choice," Michael said softly. "Absolutely perfect." Michael Jackson and the Forgotten Keys performed Man in the Mirror in that tiny pub. Over 200 people were packed inside and spilling onto the street outside, holding their phones up to record, singing every word, crying, holding each other, experiencing a moment that could never be replicated. The pub's terrible acoustics didn't matter. The cramped stage didn't matter. The rain outside didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this song. These people connected through music. When the song ended, when the final notes faded, Michael hugged each band member individually, taking his time with each person, making it personal. To Danny, he said quietly, "You're going to make it. I can hear it in your voice. You have something real, something authentic. Don't let the industry polish that away. Stay rough around the edges. That's where the truth lives. To Sarah, don't ever stop playing bass. The world doesn't have enough great bassists, especially women. You're the foundation. Never forget how important that is. To Tom, your rhythm is your superpower. You keep everyone together. You make everyone else sound better. That's a gift. Don't ever doubt that. To Rebecca, stop hiding behind that keyboard. Stop making yourself small. The world needs to see you, needs to hear what you have to say. Promise me you'll step forward. Then Michael addressed the entire pub, his voice carrying to everyone crammed inside and those listening from the street. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me why I fell in love with music in the first place. Thank you for sharing this space with me. Thank you for letting me be a musician instead of a superstar for a couple of hours. This is what I needed. This is what I'll remember. As Michael was being escorted out by his security team, he turned back one more time. Martin, how much do I owe you for the stage time? What's your usual rate for performers? Martin laughed, still somewhat dazed. Mr. Jackson, you've just made this pub legendary. You've made my life. You owe me nothing. This is worth more than any money. No, Michael insisted firmly, pulling out his wallet. Musicians should always get paid for their work. Always. That's a principle I believe in. He handed Martin several bills without counting them. For the band. They earn it tonight. Make sure they get every penny. It was £5,000. Michael Jackson arrived at Wembley Stadium at 9:15 p.m. The crowd had been waiting for over an hour and a half. Some people had left, frustrated and disappointed. But most had stayed, loyal and patient, holding their tickets and their hope. The rumor had spread through the stadium about where Michael had been, about what he'd been doing. Videos from the Rose and Crown were already circulating online. Grainy phone footage showing Michael Jackson singing with unknown musicians in a tiny pub. When Michael finally took the stage at Wembley, when he stood under the massive lights in front of 80,000 people, he didn't apologize. He didn't make excuses. He told them the truth. I got stuck in traffic, Michael said simply. And while I was stuck, I heard music coming from a pub. So I went inside. And for the last 2 hours, I've been playing music with a band called the Forgotten Keys in a tiny bar in West London. And they reminded me of something I'd forgotten. They reminded me what music is really about. The crowd didn't boo. They didn't jeer. They cheered. They understood. They were witnessing something real, something unscripted, something human. Tonight's show is dedicated to the Forgotten Keys, Michael announced. A band playing in a pub, playing for the love of it, playing because they have to, not because they're famous or successful, but because music is who they are. That's real artistry. That's what this is all about. The videos from the Rose and Crown pub went viral globally within hours. Grainy phone footage of Michael Jackson singing with unknown musicians in a tiny bar became some of the most watched content in internet history. Millions of views, endless shares, global news coverage. Within a week, the Forgotten Keys had offers from 3 major record labels. Every major music executive in London was calling Martin, the pub owner, trying to get in touch with the band. They chose the smallest label, the one that promised them creative control, the one that understood they wanted to make real music, not just commercial hits, the one that believed in artistry over algorithms. They released their first album in 1998, titled The Rose and Crown Sessions. It featured their versions of the songs they'd played with Michael that night, plus original songs inspired by the experience of watching a superstar choose intimacy over spectacle. The album went platinum in the UK, double platinum across Europe. It launched their career beyond anything they'd imagined. They toured internationally. They won awards. They became the success story they'd always dreamed of, but never really believed would happen. But they never forgot where it started. They never forgot the lesson. For their entire career, which spanned 15 years before they amicably disbanded, the Forgotten Keys played at the Rose and Crown pub every September 14th, the anniversary of the night Michael Jackson got stuck in traffic and chose to make music instead of stressing about schedules, protocol, and expectations. Martin, the pub owner, turned the Rose and Crown into a dedicated music venue for emerging artists. He renovated, expanded slightly, but kept the intimate feel. If Michael Jackson could play here, if this stage was good enough for the king of pop, then this stage is good enough for anyone, Martin said. This is where magic happens. The tiny stage where Michael performed was preserved, never modified, never upgraded. A brass plaque was installed on the wall behind it. September 14, 1997. Michael Jackson chose this stage over Wembley Stadium. Magic doesn't need a big venue. It needs presence. It needs truth. It needs love. Thousands of musicians played that stage over the years, launching careers, finding their voice, discovering their sound. The Rose and Crown became legendary in the London music scene. Playing there became a rite of passage. Danny Morrison, interviewed in 2009 right after Michael's death, his eyes red from crying, shared what Michael had told him privately that night before leaving. Michael pulled me aside, just the two of us, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Danny, success isn't playing for 80,000 people. Success is making 40 people feel something real, something they'll carry with them forever. Don't forget that when you get famous, when the big stages come, when the production gets massive, don't lose the intimacy. Don't lose this, because this is where the truth lives." That advice saved my career, saved my life, really. Whenever we got too caught up in the big shows, the big production, the pressure of success, I'd remember Michael Jackson choosing our tiny pub over Wembley Stadium. I'd remember what really mattered. Karen Fay, Michael's makeup artist and close friend, later revealed that Michael talked about the Rose and Crown night constantly for years afterward. Michael said it was one of the best performances of his life, Karen shared in an interview. He said it reminded him who he was before the fame, before the pressure, before everything got so complicated. He said he felt more like himself in that pub, with those unknown musicians and that tiny crowd, than he had in years of stadium tours. It reconnected him to his purpose. It saved him from drowning in spectacle. The footage from that night became part of permanent museum exhibitions about Michael Jackson. Film students studied it in classes about authenticity and spontaneity. Music historians analyzed it. It represented something important about artistry, about remembering that music exists to connect people, not to fill stadiums or generate revenue or create spectacle. When Michael Jackson died in 2009, the Forgotten Keys performed at the public memorial service in London, alongside major international stars. They played Man in the Mirror, the song they performed with Michael that rainy night in the pub 12 years earlier. And they dedicated it to the man who proved that the size of the venue doesn't matter. The size of the heart does. Today, the Rose and Crown Pub is a pilgrimage site for Michael Jackson fans from around the world. People come from Japan, from America, from Brazil, from everywhere to stand in the space where Michael chose to perform when he could have been anywhere else, could have been at one of the most important concerts of his career. Every night, the pub features live music from local, unknown bands trying to be heard, trying to find their voice. Because that's what Michael would have wanted. That's what he proved on September 14th, 1997, when traffic gave him a choice between obligation and opportunity, between schedule and spontaneity, between perfection and presence. Michael chose presence. He chose connection. He chose real music over perfect production. He chose 40 people who needed him over 80,000 people who expected him. Maybe that's what genius really is. Not perfection, but presence. The story of Michael Jackson at the Rose and Crown teaches us something profound about priorities, about authenticity, about what we choose when circumstances force us to make unexpected decisions that reveal our true values. Michael Jackson had 80,000 people waiting. He had a live broadcast to 30 countries reaching millions of viewers. He had a multi-million-pound production ready to go. He had contracts, obligations, expectations. He had every reason to panic, to stress, to demand immediate extraction from the traffic jam, to curse his luck and fight to get to Wembley as fast as physically possible. But instead, he heard music. He walked into a pub. He got on stage with strangers. He made music for the pure sake of making music, not because it was scheduled or profitable or part of a grand plan, but because that's what the moment called for, what his soul needed, what felt true. He chose 40 people over 80,000. He chose intimacy over spectacle. He chose the moment in front of him over the commitment behind him. He chose truth over obligation. And in doing so, he created something more valuable than any perfect stadium show could ever be. He created a story that would be told for generations. A memory that would shape careers and inspire thousands. A moment of pure magic that happened because plans failed and he decided to embrace what was instead of mourning what should have been. The Forgotten Keys became successful not because they were the best musicians in London. They were talented, yes, but London was full of talented musicians. They became successful because they were the musicians in the right place at the right time. When Michael Jackson chose to be present instead of stressed, chose connection instead of panic, chose music instead of schedule. Sometimes being in the wrong place at the wrong time is actually being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes the traffic jam is the destination. Sometimes the detour is the journey. Sometimes the obstacle is the opportunity. Michael Jackson taught us that night that greatness isn't about playing for the most people. It's about being fully present for whoever is in front of you, whether that's 80,000 or 40. It's about making every person in the room feel seen, heard, valued. It's about understanding that connection doesn't scale with venue size. Sometimes the smallest rooms hold the biggest magic. That night, London traffic stopped Michael Jackson from reaching Wembley Stadium. But maybe it stopped him so the world could remember why he was trying to get there in the first place. Not for the production, not for the spectacle, not for the broadcast or the revenue or the fame, but for the music, for the connection, for the pure joy of sharing something real with people who need it. If this story gave you chills, share it. Because the next time life blocks your way, the next time your plans fall apart, the next time traffic stops you from getting where you think you need to be, maybe that's where your own rose and crown is waiting. Maybe that's where your real purpose lives. Maybe that detour is exactly where you're supposed to be. Subscribe to hear more stories about the moments when life's interruptions become life's greatest gifts. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a reminder that presence matters more than perfection, that connection matters more than production, and that sometimes the small stage is exactly where you need to be. Have you ever had a detour turn into the best part of your journey? Have you ever found magic in an unexpected place when your plans fell apart? Let us know in the comments. Share your story, because your rose and crown moment might inspire someone else to embrace their detour. And remember, when life gives you traffic, look for the music. Listen for what's calling you. That's where the magic lives. That's where your truth is waiting. That's where genius reveals itself not as perfection, but as presence.